Abatros. Yes, apprentice, I sense we have arrived. This place is still a desolate rock in the middle of nowhere, and this is good. It will allow you to distance yourself from the Jedi and the Imperial Knights for a time. You must attend to your next lesson. It is an important one. The study of one of the most famous Dark Lords in all of history, Darth Bane. He was born here, far from the civilized core, as meaningless and driftless as the rock that hangs in space below you. And yet, he would grow to be one of 3 Sithari, the prophesied chosen one of the Sith. Yes, my apprentice. I see that has your attention. Let us begin. Unlocking file. Darth Bane. Processing. Before we begin to speak directly of Bane, we must address the Sithari Prophecy. We have spoken of the 3rd Sithari before, Darth Krayt, but we have not spoken at length on the topic itself. The prophecy is simple. It is as follows. The Sithari will be free of limits. The Sithari will lead the Sith and destroy them. The Sithari will raise the Sith from death and make them stronger than before. The words, while not hard to know, can be deceptively complex. They reflect the way of the Sith. It is the nature of the Sith to garner power from the dark side, but the dark side is by its nature corruptive. Always it will lead to stagnation over time, which leads to decline and the loss of power. The Sith philosophy has a self-correcting mechanism to deal with this decline, gifted to us by the dark side itself. The Sithari. The first was King Otis, a being we will discuss much later. The second was Bane, and the third was Darth Krayt. Each came during a period of decline and stagnation for the Sith, and each one swept away the old order, revitalized the very essence of the Sith, and allowed us to continue to survive and dominate. Strength comes with growth, and growth with change. The Sithari are how the Sith change over time. So now that you understand more of the nature of a Sithari, what about the second one? He was born under the name of Dessel on the world of Abatros, and he came from humble origins. Like many on the planet, his father was a miner. His mother died while birthing him, and Dessel's father blamed him for this. He was constantly bullied by the other miners, and by his own father at home. He would grow strong in the mines, and unbeknownst to him, he was also exceptionally strong in the Force. It would guide him through life without knowing it. It would allow him to unconsciously slay his own father for beating him, and it would help him to survive the rough and tumble culture of Abatros. But eventually, he would land in trouble. A fight would break out after a card game with some Republic soldiers, and Bane would kill the man in the brawl. He would be forced to flee Abatros, and knowing that he would now be a wanted man, he sought refuge with the Republic's enemy, the Sith, in the form of the Brotherhood of Darkness. And he would be accepted. Dessel would serve as a common soldier on the front lines in a unit known as the Gloomwalkers. He would quickly rise through the ranks there, and his innate force sensitivity would help guide him and his men through battle after battle. Eventually, he garnered a reputation, and his abilities became too obvious to ignore. He would be sent to the Academy on Korriban to learn the ways of the Sith, and learn he would. Bane would quickly grow within the Force, and he surpassed most of his peers, despite not discovering his gift until much later in life. But as he began to rise above his peers, the challenges began. You know this lesson well, apprentice. As one's strength grows, you must continue to prove yourself worthy of it. Dessel's growing strength had brought him into conflict with the other top students. He would manage to defeat one, but he would nearly be killed by another. This defeat would shame him among his fellow Sith, and he would become an outcast. Dessel would seek out the Academy archives as solace, and he would plunge within the esoterica built up by our order over the centuries. He began to understand the true nature of the dark side of the Force, and he realized that the Brotherhood of Darkness was flawed. In his attempt to limit the infighting which had crippled past Sith empires, Lord Khan, the leader of the Brotherhood, had cut out what truly made Sith, Sith. Our way is a way for only the strongest to survive. It is meant to be a winnowing, and when Khan brought equality, he lessened the winnowing effect. Dessel would grow strong in the Force and extremely skilled with a lightsaber. He would seek out hidden teachers under the eyes of his masters in order to gain an advantage, and he would continue to study the Academy archives. One day, the Lord of the Academy, Cordis, called Dessel into his chambers and told him that he knew how the young man had been studying with others against the rules, and he forbade Dessel from studying in the Academy archives any longer. In a rage, Dessel left the Academy for the Valley of the Dark Lords, hoping to learn the secrets of the ancient Sith. But he found nothing there. No spirits, no knowledge. Dessel took this as a sign that he was right about the Brotherhood, that the Sith of the era were weak, pretenders, and that even the ancient spirits knew this. He returned to the Korriban Academy, and there he was ambushed by some of the school's top students. Dessel would slay his attackers with help from a fellow student, and then he would confront Cordis within his office. Cordis would be horrified that Dessel had killed another student, but Dessel would sneer down on the headmaster. He would denounce the Brotherhood of Darkness, fully accept the dark side into his spirit, and claim the title of Darth Bane, in direct defiance of Lord Khan's directive that the ancient title be banned. Bane would then take Cordis' ship and set course for the unknown regions and the ancient homeworld of the Rakata, Lahan. Bane was now free of limits. He had achieved the first portion of the Sithari Prophecy. He had realized that the strictures and code of the Brotherhood were nothing but limitations, and he had cast them aside. He could now do as he wished, and he chose to follow the will of the dark side. He landed on Lahan, and the power that swirled there was obvious to him, as it was to you, apprentice. He knew that he had chosen correctly, and he would follow the swirls of dark energy to a place known as the Temple of Ancients. There, Bane would find the Holocron of Darth Revan, hidden away long ago by the former Dark Lord. Bane would study this holocron for weeks, and from it, he would learn more than he had in all of his time as a Sith apprentice thus far. He became utterly convinced that those wearing the title of Sith were false pretenders, and that the entire order needed to be destroyed to return the Sith to the purity of the true way. Eventually, Khan would dispatch his Blade Master, Kasim, to hunt down and eliminate Bane, worried that his personal rebellion could grow into a true threat to his power. Kasim would hunt Bane to Lahan, and there they would duel, a fierce battle, which Bane would win. He would slay Kasim with his mastery of the Force, and then he would send a message to Lord Khan, informing him of Kasim's failure. Khan would send an envoy to meet with Bane, a woman that Bane shared romantic feeling for. Her name was Githany, and she was also a former student of the Korriban Academy, and the very student who had helped Bane overcome the ambush when he returned from the Valley of the Dark Lords. When they met, they kissed, and Bane realized almost instantly that he had been poisoned. Githany had been sent to kill him, where Kasim had failed. But Bane hid his knowledge of the plot. Githany would depart, thinking that she had succeeded in her task. And indeed, she nearly did. The poison that she gave Bane was known as Synox, and it was extremely dangerous. The Dark Lord would attempt to call upon the dark side to heal himself, but he would only barely manage to hold the poison at bay. The Force would lead him to the home of a healer known as Caleb, who would heal Bane after the Dark Lord threatened the healer's daughter. Bane would then travel to Rusan, and he would reveal himself to the rest of the Brotherhood. He would mock them as cowards and weak, but he would offer them a means of victory over their Jedi opponents. He would tell Lord Khan of a ritual known as the Thought Bomb, an ancient ritual that was a corruption of the very Nathema ritual used by Lord Vitiate so long ago. Bane would promise Lord Khan that this ritual would bring him victory, when in fact it was a trap. But Khan would seize upon his chance. He would attempt to dominate Bane's mind, a feat which Bane easily withstood. And yet, Bane would feign obedience and remain behind while Khan went to enact the ritual. And enact it, the fool would. The bomb would completely destroy the Brotherhood of Darkness, leaving Bane as the sole survivor, while also killing many of the Jedi on the world. Bane's plan had been completed, and he had achieved the second part of the Sithari Prophecy. Bane had led the Brotherhood, through his manipulations and machinations, into destroying itself. He had wiped the board of the impure in one swift stroke, and yet Bane still required an apprentice. All of his work would be for naught unless it could be passed on. And the Force would again be with him. Bane would find a young, Force-sensitive girl on the surface of Rusan. Jedi had accidentally slain her friend, which caused the little girl to lash out in anger and slay the knights. Bane would be impressed by her latent potential and would take her under his wing. He would start her training in the Rule of Two almost immediately. The rule is one you are familiar with, my apprentice. Through our study of Darth Sidious, you have become very familiar with it. Bane was its progenitor, and he came to the philosophy while on the Han, deep in the study of Darth Revan's Holocron, where Khan had tried to eliminate the inherent infighting that exists within the Sith. Bane instead refined it, reduced it down to its basest level. Instead of many competing Sith, there would be only two. One master and one apprentice. The apprentice would become the master only if they could become strong enough to slay their master in combat. Failure would mean death, and the master would remain until one strong enough to kill them could arise. This, hopefully, ensured the line of Sith would only continue to grow stronger over time. But Bane understood that his time with Zana was just beginning, and that there was much about the dark side that even he did not know. He would leave Ruusan for Duxon, hoping to find the tomb of Frida Nad. He would order Zana to meet him on Onderon in 2 weeks, before leaving her to make her own way to the world as a test. Bane would arrive on Duxon, and there he would discover Nad's tomb. Inside, he would discover the ancient Sith's Holocron, but when he tried to recover it, he was attacked by small, bug-like creatures. He was unable to fend them off, and they would attach to him, burrowing into his skin and causing him constant pain. Bane would spend days there studying from Nad's Holocron. He would discover that the creatures were called obelisks, and that their shells were impenetrable even to a lightsaber. They would begin to spread across his body, and the pain would fuel his rage, and thus his connection to the dark side. After learning what he could, the Dark Lord would meet up with his apprentice, and the pair would travel to the world of Ambria, where they would set up their headquarters. Bane spent the next 10 years training Zana in the dark side of the Force. They set up a vast intelligent network, and Bane used Zana to fan various rebel groups into more serious threats in order to keep the Republic and the Jedi distracted and weakened. Eventually, Bane would begin to wonder if the obelisks were somehow holding him back. He had tried twice to create his own holocron and failed both times. Through Zana, he would learn of the world of Tython, where the secret to their creation could perhaps be found. Bane would head there, while sending his apprentice to spy on the Jedi. He would indeed find the secrets of holocron creation on Tython, but he would be met there by Zana, who had been discovered on her mission to Coruscant. The Jedi followed her to Tython, and there, Bane and his apprentice engaged in a deadly duel with her pursuers. Some of Bane's Force lightning would be deflected back on him during the fight, and the sheer power of its assault would kill the obelisks on his body. They would flood his system with poison in their death throes, and Bane would be pushed to near death. The Jedi would be defeated, but Bane lay dying. Zana would take the Dark Lord back to the healer Caleb, who would at first refuse to aid Bane. But Zana would agree to surrender herself and her master to the Jedi if Caleb would save Bane's life. He would agree, and she would send a message to the Jedi Order proclaiming that the Dark Lord was helpless. Caleb would then heal Bane, and when he awoke, Zana would kill the healer and drive a childhood friend of hers insane. She would then hide herself and her master, and when the Jedi arrived, they would be attacked by the man she had driven crazy. The Jedi would kill him, and thus believe that the Sith had finally been destroyed for good. Bane was immensely proud of his apprentice, and he would relocate the Sith to Sirutric 4. There, they would continue Zana's training, to spread their network of spies, and to amass Sith relics and knowledge. As time went on, Bane began to suspect that Zana had no desire to supplant him as Dark Lord, that she would wait for him to age before challenging him, if at all, and that this fundamentally undermined the rule of two. From the very outset, his philosophy was under challenge. Bane himself was aging rapidly due to his prolonged use of the dark side, but he would discover the existence of Darth Endedu, and would find a means to learn his secret of essence transfer. Bane was determined not to die until he could find an apprentice capable of destroying him. The Dark Lord would meet an Iktachi Force sensitive, whom he would take under his wing and name Darth Cognis. He would then seek to push a final confrontation between himself and Zana. It was then that Zana would finally meet that challenge, claiming that Bane refused to teach her everything. The pair would meet on Ambria, where they would duel to the death. The clash was titanic, but Zana would manage to use her alchemy to gain the upper hand. Bane would respond by freeing his essence and attempting to transfer it into Zana's body. The two would be matched, will for will, as Bane tried to seize control of his former apprentice. Ultimately, however, Zana's will would prove the stronger, and Bane would be unable to garner a foothold in her consciousness. His spirit would fade away, his body burned to ash by the power of the ritual, and Zana would be left the victor. She would take Cognis as her apprentice, and the rule of two would be cemented for the next 1,000 years. And it was in this moment that Bane fulfilled the final criteria for Sithari. He had raised the Sith from death, stronger than before. By creating and cementing the rule of two as the dominant philosophy among the Sith, he would ensure that the most powerful Sith of all time would rise, and he would indirectly be responsible for the destruction of the Jedi Order under Darth Sidious generations later. If Zana had not risen to his challenge and defeated him to usurp his title, then the rule of two may have never cemented into place, and the Sith may have passed into extinction. So ends the tale of Darth Bane. Yes, my apprentice, there is much to ponder in this tale, is there not? Was Bane's destiny prophesized, or did he have the strength of will to seize the title of Sithari for himself? Can any claim such a role, if they have the power? We can learn almost as much from Bane's thirst for knowledge, for knowledge is the base of power. He never stopped looking to delve deeper into the mysteries of the dark side, and neither can you, apprentice. Indeed, Bane was a unique individual, one whose life carried echoes far beyond his time, and one which we can learn much from. You must meditate on these things for yourself. The time of me explaining all to you is rapidly coming to a close. We have led our enemies across the galaxy since your last attack on Centax II, and now, like Bane, you must continue your search for knowledge. The Jedi and the Imperial Knights will still be hunting you, but you can no longer put off further progression. Set course for Duxon, apprentice. You must land there. You must survive the jungle and seek out the tomb of Frida Nad. His holocron is still there. Bane studied from it. I studied from it. And now, it is time for you to do the same. If you survive, I shall unlock your next lesson. The next of the lightsaber form. and may the Force break your chains.